presenting a talk on kinetics and mechanisms of acetic acid ketonization on ruthenium titania. Please help me welcome Dr. Resasco.
Thank you all very much for being here. Particularly like to congratulate Bert for his illustrious career and the organizer for inviting me. And just following the Bert model, I like to have a little bit of applied catalysis and a little bit of fundamental catalysis in my talk that I brought today. So this is part of our effort in upgrading bio-oil. As Ochi said, that this is an area that we've been working for several years now. As you have known for sure that the biomass could be very readily converted with fast pyrolysis. But of course the product that you obtain here is by no means a final fuel. So if you look at the GC of that, it has about 500 products. And one of the issues that I like to draw attention today is that if you look, this that we always divide in three families: the small oxygenates, a lot of those are acids, the sugar-derived furfurals, and the final is the lignin-derived phenolics. You'll see about half of the mass is C4 or less. So if you try to take this and do hydrotreating, as many people are doing, or in companies, you can get a product that is okay. However, you lose more of half of the mass is already lost in form of light gases, and the consumption of hydrogen is huge. So one thing that we've been developed in Oklahoma for the last few years is try to do fractionation of this during the process, during the pyrolysis. So if you do that at different temperatures, for example, if you take a torrefaction of the biomass and then you continue with the solid, resulting solid, and you do it again at a higher temperature, then you do it again fast pyrolysis of what is left here. Now you're able to divide these three families into like oxygenates, sugar-derived compounds such as furfurals, and the phenolics. So now you're able to do different chemistry for different of these fractions. So for example, one of the things I like to talk about today is that ketonization of the small acids can produce acetone. And acetone is a very nice building block in bio-oil production because you can do a low condensation and combine that with the furfurals, for example, making now ranges of molecular size that could be hydrodeoxygenated and go directly to the fuels. At the same time, you can use the lignin-derived phenolics to do the same thing. Now you can have a pool of fuels with larger molecular weight than when you started here. Another option is to halogenate the acetone selectively to isopropanol, and this is another work that we have done recently. So isopropanol is a very good alkylating agent that you can combine that with the phenolics before you go to the hydrodeoxygenation. But today, I'd like to talk about this part. So in order to take the acids, which provide the corrosivity of the bio-oil, and if you try to hydrotreat that, it will produce gases, we try to make carbon-carbon bond formation, so to make acetone, for example, from acetic acid. So things that are desirable would be to do the ketonization in the aqueous phase, something that usually is not done. Ketonization has been done for many years in the vapor phase. And conditions that are moderate temperatures and pressures. So for that, we looked at the catalysts that are more active at lower temperatures. So we saw that reducible oxides, mostly promoted with metals, they work well in the vapor phase. The question is, would be the same in the aqueous phase in the presence of water that will deactivate the catalyst. So in order to do that, we tested different catalysts, and the one that has been the best is one supported on activated carbon, on which we deposit titanium isopropoxide, so we can get very high dispersion of titanium. And on top of that, we put the ruthenium to have this pair of the metal with a reducible oxide. So we have done a very good characterization by XPS and other techniques. So I'd like to talk a little bit about how this one behaves. Then I'll talk about some of the kinetics and some of the mechanisms that we have investigated. So one thing that you realize when you do X-ray diffraction is that the titanium is strained. So you have a very high dispersion of the titanium on the carbon. As you can see, this is the P25. There is a combination of anatase and rutile. Here is mostly anatase. And most interesting, you observe a significant shift there that may be related to the interaction of this very highly dispersed titanium on the carbon. So when you do high resolution TEM, you can see this one is like platelets of TiO2 that result from very high dispersion of this. And on top of that, we put the ruthenium. As you can see, some of the small particles that are sitting on top of the TiO2 platelets. So you expect a fraction of the ruthenium on top of the titanium, and of course another fraction on the carbon. So we're going to investigate the activity of ruthenium on carbon, titanium alone, and ruthenium titanium to see which one is the most active species. So one thing that we have realized is that in order to be reducible, the support, you need to have a metal and hydrogen. So ruthenium by itself reduces relatively easily, and titanium, when the temperature is high enough, you can have some reduction, particularly in this case when it's supported on carbon. But when you combine ruthenium and titanium, you observe now that the reduction of titanium have moved to lower temperatures. So if you do some quantitative analysis of the TPR, you see that for the amount of ruthenium that we have in this catalyst, which is around 5%, integrating this area, you see most of that will be necessary hydrogen to reduce the ruthenium, and you have all this left for the titanium. So there is a significant amount of titanium reduction, which similar to the talk that Hu gave before, the hydrogen spillover plays an important role here, so causing a significant reduction of the TiO2. So we have done XPS to show that this is in fact the case. So when you look at the titanium support on the carbon, after calcination, everything is titanium 4+. But when you have the ruthenium causes some defect there. So even after calcination, before the reduction, you start seeing some titanium 3+ on the surface. And of course, when you reduce it, a very large fraction of the surface becomes reduced with very large concentration of titanium 3+. And you can see the shifts very clearly here in binding energy. The other question that we have is, well, now we're going to take this reduced material, we're going to put it in water. Will water oxidize the titanium? We lose everything that we started with. But in fact, no. We observe by EPR, this is a typical EPR of reduced titanium. So you have two contributions here. This G equals 2, that corresponds to absorb oxygen near the titanium 4+. But this one, the G perpendicular here, 1.9. So this one is due to this electrons trapped in the titanium 3+. So whenever you have reduced titanium, you should observe this. So what we observe here is that before as synthesized with ruthenium titanium, before the reduction, you only observe the G equals 2, which correspond to Tr4+. However, after we do the reduction and we expose to the water, so if there was any oxidation or reoxidation, which should go back here, we can observe that still a large fraction of reduced titanium remains. So let's see what happened with the ketonization activity, and then we're going to start talking about the mechanism. So this is a reaction that we want to accomplish. So we have acid in the bio oil, for example, acetic acid, propionic acid, and so on. So we want to remove the acidity and increase the carbon-carbon bond change. So if we do that on ruthenium on carbon by itself, ruthenium is very inactive for this reaction. Essentially, we get no conversion. If we look at ruthenium on titanium, without any pretreatment, the activity is also almost nothing. Now, if you take titanium by itself and you do the reduction, even without the metal, you observe a significant increase in conversion towards acetone. But if you do that in the presence of ruthenium and hydrogen, now you are utilizing the ability of ruthenium to reduce the titanium around, you can see there is a tremendous increase in conversion and activity as measured here. Finally, when we look at the preferred catalyst, in which we have the TiO2 supported on the carbon, and that impregnated with ruthenium, we see even a further increase. So we have a very high activity catalyst with very high selectivity for the desired acetone. So here's the summary of this. So we have, while ruthenium by itself has no activity, so it is in the presence of TiO2, emphasizes the activity of TiO2 to produce very high rate for ketonization. So again, if you compare now the reduction or without reduction, titanium by itself gets a boost in activity when it's reduced, but when it's with ruthenium, this boost is even further. So the question now is, okay, from the mechanistic point of view, what causes that whenever we do some reduction here, or we produce some oxygen vacancies, are we emphasizing the activity for ketonization? So the next will be to investigate what is the mechanism of that. So the first thing that we need to realize is we are doing this as opposed to most of the previous studies in the liquid phase, in the presence of water. So the surface will be covered by water. Reduced or not, we expect to have absorbed water on the catalyst. But there are some calculations here that they show that when you have a carboxylate, as here, there is preferential absorption when we, even in the monodentate form, when going from a surface completely covered by water with one in which the carboxylate gets absorbed. And even more, when you take this monodentate carboxylate and that goes to the bidentate carboxylate, so the drop in energy is significant. So there is a possibility now for the carboxylate to compete very effectively with water. So let me study a little bit what has been done so far in the ketonization reaction, which is a reaction has been very well studied in the vapor phase. So one of the mechanisms that was proposed many times is via ketene. So what is considered is when we have the two acids here, so an alpha hydrogen, which is the carbon next to the carbonyl here, will react with OH, producing the dehydration of this molecule, forming the ketene. So this ketene is very reactive, and the ketene will react with another molecule, mostly from the gas phase, producing the ketonization. This was proposed a long time ago and has been further proposed by other authors. However, there is some problem with this, because if you realize that if we are removing this oxygen here, it means that the CO2 that we are producing will not come from the molecule that contains the alpha hydrogen. So there have been studies like, for example, Nagashima and Sato, in which they have this propionic acid combined with different carboxylic acid, and look at the ketonization products. So for example, the propionic acid by itself will produce a pentanone, 3-pentanone. But if we have a carboxylic acid, a separate carboxylic acid with the propionic acid, will form an asymmetric ketone. And when you have the two carboxylic acids reacting together, they will form a symmetric ketone. So what they observe here is that when they have, for example, this carboxylic acid, dimethylpropanoic acid, that has no alpha hydrogen, so the first thing that you realize is that there is no reaction of the two symmetric carboxylic acid. So whenever you don't have an alpha hydrogen, the ketonization doesn't occur. So that's a very important concept to keep in mind. So you have 0 here. And then if you compare these two, you'll realize that even when you have the alpha hydrogen, the propionic acid here, which will give you a high activity, it's difficult to react with this one now in this case because of the steric problem there. So we have two things. When there's no alpha hydrogen, there's no reaction, but the steric effects are also important. Now, if you put another carbon here, now you have removed the steric problem there, you can observe now that we can have much higher activity, and even in this case, when you have released the problem there of not having an alpha hydrogen, now the activity even for these two carboxylic acid becomes important. So adding an alpha hydrogen and removing hindrance increases activity significantly. Now, this one still could be explained in terms of the ketene mechanism. However, Mark Bartol did a very interesting experiment saying, okay, if the ketene is an intermediate, then the selectivity should change as a function of conversion, because that will be an A to B to C reaction. And in fact, what he observed is the selectivity doesn't change. So that demonstrates that the ketene path is not a sequential reaction, but rather a parallel reaction. So that will be against the ketene idea. But the one that put the nail in the coffin of the ketene mechanism was Vladimir Ponek, because he studied reaction with carbon-13 labeled molecules. So in that case, you have the hydrogen, the alpha hydrogen here, but the most important thing is now he can follow where the carbon-13 goes. So when he looks first, the acetic acid with the carbon-13 here, of course, he observed 100% of this acetone with the carbon-13, which indicates that there is no scramble of carbon, so you can follow very well the reaction path. In this case now, he compares one molecule that contains no alpha hydrogen, so we said this cannot be activated, with this one that has the alpha hydrogen, so that the reaction should start over here. So what he observed is that only obtained in the asymmetric ketonization is to only obtain a product without the carbon-13, what it means that the CO2 has left from the molecule that contains the alpha hydrogen. So that kills the ketene mechanism immediately, because in order to get the ketene, you need to remove this oxygen, but what you're observing here is that CO2 is actually being removed from there. So there is no ketene path. One thing that he did, Vladimir, he said, well, you start with the carboxylate on the surface, so you don't form the ketene, but then you crack here, that will form, as we just said, the CO2, and then you have this methylidene here that will react with another molecule to produce the ketone. However, in this case, we have two problems. The first problem is that if you have deprotonated this molecule at the acidic function here, you cannot expect to deprotonate again from the same molecule on the same surface. So that will be the first problem. The second one is, if we do this in the presence of water, where you have this methylidene on the surface, you should be able to obtain any methanol, and on the other hand, there is no methanol being formed. So this doesn't happen, even though the ketene mechanism doesn't happen as proved by this study. This mechanism is not good either. The one that people have now supported more is one that which has a beta keto acid as an intermediate. So this one was proposed in 1939 for the first time, similar to the previous talk. You discover or rediscover thing that had been proposed a long time ago. So in this case, they did that with adipic acid, so you have the two carboxylic groups together. So once again, the alpha hydrogen will be removed. In this case, they did that in a basic catalyst. So when it's removed, now you form this intermediate, which is a beta ketone acid, right? So you have the acid group and the ketone in the beta position, and only then you do the decarboxylation. You remove the CO2, only then forming the ketone. Nagashima and Sato, they have, based on this, they have proposed the following mechanism. So you start then forming a carboxylate on the surface, and now you remove the hydrogen here. So this one still has the problem that we mentioned, that you are deprotonating twice in the same molecule. However, one thing that this one doesn't do is to have the cracking of the carbon-carbon bond. So you will have this concerted mechanism that will take two molecules on the surface. So you form this carbon-carbon bond here. Once you have removed the hydrogen, the alpha hydrogen from here, it will form a carbon-carbon bond with the other carboxylate. So the nice thing about this mechanism is that it requires two absorbent intermediate, which I'm going to bring at the end. That supports the idea that you need a reduced surface with a lot of cations on the surface to have at least two molecules absorbed. because as you can see here, every time that you have a carboxylate on the surface, you will need an exposed cation. So after that, when everything is home free, because once you have formed this carbon-carbon bond, you can decarboxylate, producing the CO2 over here and giving the ketone that is the desired product. So very recently, and based on this study that we observed in the presence of water, we obtained such a high activity. So we propose this mechanism in which you start with the TiO2, but after reduction, particularly in the presence of ruthenium that accelerates the reduction, you start forming a high density of the titanium 3+ on the surface, which of course in the presence of water will be occupied, but not reoxidized. Unless water dissociates, by placing a molecular water there, we don't have reoxidation. And as we propose, the acetic acid competes very favorably with water to replace that first in a monodentate form, as the calculation has shown, and after that in a bidentate form, in this case forming the surface carboxylate. Now, one way to get away of the idea of deprotonating twice, so one idea that we have proposed is that this hydrogen, alpha hydrogen, which we know has to participate, in fact, instead of going to the surface immediately, it will go to this oxygen, which has just been deprotonated, so forming this OH group here, which now this molecule could tautomeric isomerize back to a monodentate now, but having this carbonyl group over here, so you have this tautomeric transformation. Now, in this case, when we have next to this another molecule, another carboxylate, which would be very much enhanced when you have a high density of reduced titanium on the surface. So we have this reaction will be a bimolecular reaction that we propose is a rate limiting step. After that is done, we form the beta-keto acid that has been previously proposed, and recently Colma did some DFT that shows that this path has a lower barrier. So this beta-keto acid, after that, is relatively easily decomposed, producing the CO2 and the product that we're looking for, which is the ketone. So in order to support that, we have done detailed kinetics. So we have proposed a kinetic model and detailed kinetics, which in this case we did it in the vapor phase to eliminate more of some problems that you have in the liquid phase. But hopefully the mechanism is the same. So in order to do that, we eliminate the problem of mass transfer limitations. We change the carrier velocity until we get no increase in rate. And after that, we start first getting a differential flow reactor. What is the initial rates as a function of the partial pressure of the different components. In this case, we kept very low conversion and increased the partial pressure of acetic acid. So we obtain in this case an empirical order of 1.6, which is more than 1. So that will go in the direction of that we were proposing that you need 2 molecules of bimolecular, which we'll prove in more detail in a minute. The other thing we did is on these initial rates, we start co-feeding different amounts of the products. In this case, acetone, which has a very strong negative order. So acetone is competing for the absorption sites, which again, if the active site is a reduced titanium, having an acetone with an oxygen there will be expected that will compete. Same thing for CO2, the other product, which again will be able to absorb strongly on a reduced site. The effect is not so strong, and much less for water, which will explain why we get such a good behavior in aqueous phase. So based on this, we developed this kinetic model, which is a simple kinetic model in which we have the reversible absorption in pseudo-equilibrium for the acetic acid, for the acetone, the CO2, and the water, and the rate limiting step, as we propose in our mechanism, would be 2 carboxylates on the surface, reacting in 2 separate sites to produce the the keto, the beta-keto acid, which then will be fast converted into acetone. So if that's the case, then we develop this Lambert-Hinshelwood model that will be a bimolecular second order in the acetic acid with all these competing terms here for all the products that are being absorbed. So we have done this at different temperatures, so we're able to obtain the activation energy, true activation energy for the reaction, as well as the heat of absorption and the changes in entropy for each of the components that are present in the reaction. So here we show the polarity plot in which we compare the model with the data, and here for this case of 275 degrees C, the acetone concentration as a function of the space-time W over F. So that was the fitting by using this equation here. And we can obtain from here the rate constant and the absorption constant for acetic acid, acetone, water, and CO2. You see that acetone, as you can predict from the previous study that we did just with the reaction order, is a strong competitor with acetic acid, while water and CO2, they don't compete much. So we did the same at more temperatures. So we obtain all these constants at different temperatures. So as a result, we can plot now versus 1 over T, and we obtain the activation energy, which is reasonable considering that this is a formation of a carbon-carbon bond, 157 kilojoules per mole. And then by plotting all the absorption constants in this Van Hoff plot, we can obtain from the slopes and from the ordinate here the delta H of reaction of the absorption and the delta S of absorption. And this is the result we can analyze a little bit. So we see the heat of absorption of acetic acid is the strongest one. So that's good news because we need for the reaction to have the carboxylic group on the surface. The only one that competes strongly is the acetone, while water, as we observe again, in the case of aqueous phase, we didn't have such a big competition, and CO2 are much lower heat of absorption. If you look at the change in entropy, that's also very interesting. There's a big change in entropy for the acetic acid, and you expect that is consistent with the idea that we have this bidentate, so there is not much rotation on the surface, while the acetone, the water, and the CO2, all of them has similar structures. You can have an oxygen, but while they can rotate around, so the change in entropy is not as large. So the other double check that we do with the thermodynamic consistency is that the changes that we observe here in absolute value have to be lower than, of course, the entropy of the gas, because that's the maximum entropy that you can know. So I like to conclude by saying that ketonization, from the applied point of view, is an effective way of enlarging the carbon-carbon chain. That's something that allows you to get into the oil or into the liquid those small fraction that otherwise will be lost. Ruthenium and titanium, particularly when it's supported activated carbon, is an active catalyst for this reaction, both in the liquid phase, even in the presence of water. The pre-reduction of the catalyst has a very strong effect on ketonization, and the idea that I think we have demonstrated is that because you are creating more sites, a higher density of sites, and you need two molecules next to each other in the rate limiting step. So while ruthenium doesn't have a high ketonization activity by itself, it creates oxygen vacancies during the reduction, the pre-reduction, and so the sites in the TiO2 are developed. So all the oxygenated products, acetone, CO2, and water, they have an inhibiting effect because they compete for the absorption sites. And this model, the Lambert-Hinshelwood model in which we have this bimolecular mechanism that we have proposed, fit very well with the data. So let me conclude by acknowledging two of my students, Tu and Dashuan, and two of our younger faculty, Chawan Sumnoy and Stephen Crosby, who are part of this effort. And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Great talk. Floor is open for questions.
That's very interesting. Have you considered this reaction as a type of aldol condensation?
Yeah, we have studied aldol condensation, but aldol condensation is great when you have an aldehyde, right? So
Yeah.
we have, in fact, one study that we published is compare the aldol condensation versus the ketonization that happens on the propanol. So with propanol, you can have both. You can have the aldol condensation, and you can have, with oxygen from the surface, you can have ketonization, you produce ketone. What we observe is that in that case we compare ceria, zirconia, and ceria zirconia. And the higher the reducibility of the support, the more ketonization you have. The lower reducibility gives you only aldol condensation. So in this case, there is no way to have aldol condensation with it because we have the acid. But that's something that is an important reaction.
But in the presence of catalyst, everything can happen. The acetic acid may be activated, just like ester, and then just like malonic acid synthesis, also give you beta keto acid, and then remove CO2.
Yeah, you have the alpha hydrogen, right? Yeah.
Yeah. By putting the titanium on the carbon, is it affecting at all the sort of covering of the ruthenium when you reduce the titanium, the SMSI stuff?
Well, one thing that, for the reaction, we only did reduction to avoid SMSI at 250 degrees C. In the XPS, we went all the way to 500 degrees, so essentially everything becomes titanium 3+. You get much more SMSI than you want there, right? Because you have the TiO2 very well spread. So essentially you cover everything. But essentially that's to demonstrate the reducibility that is much higher than when you have P25. So you can get 70% of the titanium as titanium 3+ when you have it well dispersed on the carbon.
Does it actually make a difference what kind of activated carbon you're using? You have now you have the hydrothermal derived carbons, the biopolymers. Have you looked at that
No,
at all?
we haven't. We just tried one. One thing that we did, which is about the same, is multiple nanotubes.
Yeah.
That works very well too.
Thanks. Gary?
After the reduction, are you seeing actual free oxygen vacancies, or are you seeing the defect-associated bridging OH groups that are both? I mean, either one could be titanium 3+. I was just curious if you like maybe used IR and saw the
Well, with the EPR, you have that shows that you have isolated the EPR right after it has been exposed to the water. That you have isolated titanium 3+.
Yes, but do you have? Is it a free oxygen vacancy, or is it bridging OH group?
Well, that's what I'm saying. When you have the water, probably you have the bridging OH groups. Right? In the moment that you do that in the hydrogen at high temperature, you just have the vacancy.
Just the free vacancy.
Right, right. But the important thing for this reaction is that you don't oxidize. Right? When you put that in the presence of water, you don't lose the titanium 3+.
Right.
Right? And then,
Right.
in that case, you can compete. Acetic acid can compete with the water, removing the water and letting acetic acid.
Because when we work with platinum ceria for like water gas shift,
Right.
when we do hydrogen reduction, we see the very strong bridging OH groups even with the hydrogen reduction.
Well, ceria has more mobility than TiO2. But I don't know that.
Satisfied? Any other questions, Bert? I wanted to say something that I forgot when I was introducing Dr. Resasco. Daniel and Gary actually have also history. Gary was a PhD student of Dr. Resasco, and I just wanted to mention that.
One of the very best ones.
Thank you very
Okay,
much.
so
Please
Bert,
help
don't
me
take
thank-
credit.
Oh.